would like to appear in the recording, that they can easily turn their cameras off for the duration of the webinar. Thank you. The other thing is, I think that the note within the chat also that you can put your questions into the chat, and as we hear from Peter Kearns shortly, and as we hear from our 4 transformative partnership models in the interactive interviews, and from Jack in the closing section on the power of empathy partnerships, please put your questions in the chat, and we will hopefully have time towards the end of the webinar for Jack and I to facilitate those questions and to put those questions to your speakers during the webinar at the close. Thank you very much. There was just some logistics that I should have, I suppose, covered at the very start before going to the agenda proper. Looking at the agenda, we have 4 speakers that we're going to hear from, and they're going to cover a grassroots, a regional, a national, and international models of partnership, and more about that shortly. Jack is going to close our webinar by synthesizing and bringing it all together, so no small task for Jack at the end later. And really, from what we've heard from our 4 dynamic partnership models, from our 4 keynote speakers, looking at the power of empathy for transformation and linking them very nicely with the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals. But now I would like to hand you over, I suppose, to the man himself from Pascal. Actually, just in one moment, I'll just give a quick mention of the Pascal networks before handing over to Peter Kearns to tell us about Pascal and EcCoWell particularly. But just also, there are a number of other Pascal learning networks. So the Pascal program is a Learning Cities Networks program that looks at innovative models and the big issues facing cities. And Jack and I were both members of the EcCoWell network, as were Eugenia, who we will hear from later from Taipei in Taiwan, and Dennis Barrett from Cork Learning City. So we had all contributed to a paper for Pascal that Peter will tell you about in one moment. In that network, the EcCoWell network that we're here for this morning. But you see on screen there that there are a number of other thematic networks in Pascal that are all active as well, and some of them might be holding webinars later this year in advance of the upcoming Pascal conference that Peter will mention. So it's nice to see those thematic areas, inclusive economic futures, the faith-based Learning City Development Network, for example. You can read them on screen yourself. And I know in Australia, Wyndham are joined another 1 or 2 of those networks, as well as the EcCoWell network that we're here for this webinar this morning. So Helen, if we could have the next screen, please. And what I'm going to do now is give a warm welcome to our good friend, Peter Kearns from Pascal. And I suppose we go back a long way in Limerick. He visited us in 2012 and really got us up and running for Learning Limerick as a learning city. And that was actually, I suppose, after him having worked with Cork for many years. And I suppose that's how the link was kindly set up with us, and we are delighted to have been friends ever since that time. And we look forward to Peter, to you telling us more about, I suppose, the history of EcCoWell and how it has evolved over the years. Thank you very much, Peter.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Very pleased to think about EcCoWell and what's happened over the last 9 years. And it's a story of how an idea can evolve, take shape, and open possibilities. And that's the story that I hope we can think about in this webinar this evening. The origins of EcCoWell go back to 2011, when I participated in a conference planning the Taipei Learning City. I was impressed by the broad approach taken, ranging across health, welfare, environment, education, and other sectors. I reported this to my Pascal colleagues, and a lively discussion followed on how such an integrated approach for learning cities could be developed. The discussion led to EcCoWell, learning cities that integrate ecology, economy, community, lifelong learning, and well-being. I was asked by the Pascal board to write a paper setting out the concept. I did this, and the paper was posted on the Pascal website. The City of Cork and Cork really played a starring role in all this, which I certainly acknowledge, then invited me to Cork to speak a seminar.
That's okay, someone's talking there
Right.
on music.
Cork then set up arrangements to implement Cork as an EcCoWell learning city. This involved a leadership group that brought together education, health, environment, vet, and other expertise as well. The initial phase of EcCoWell development ran up to 2017, when Cork hosted the third UNESCO International Conference on Learning Cities. The initial Cork focus on integrating learning, health, environment development was carried over into the Cork Statement on Learning Cities that emerged from that conference. I will read the part of the statement. To support the building of sustainable learning cities that are green, healthy, equitable, entrepreneurial, and capable of offering their citizens decent work opportunities. Another important development during this time was that Cork and later Limerick both initiated learning community projects to try out EcCoWell ideas in local communities. I regard this as a very important development. The second phase of EcCoWell development occurred in 2017, when the PASCAL board asked me to review the EcCoWell experience. I did this and recommended that happiness and entrepreneurship would be added to the EcCoWell objectives. This was agreed so that the second phase of EcCoWell development ran from that year up to last year, when the EcCoWell Community Recovery Program was conducted with a number of cities participating. Some are here, of course, Limerick and Tong, and who else? Perhaps those. The outcomes of that program is really the subject of this webinar. Where does EcCoWell go from now? I've talked about where it's come from. There are two further points I'd like to make. First, we're confronted by a world with a range of critical mega challenges. Recovery from the pandemic, aging populations everywhere, the growing impact of artificial intelligence on business and industry, and ongoing urbanization. So education and learning throughout life will change in response to these challenges. The UNESCO Future of Education report, due at the end of this year, will offer some guidance. My second point is that EcCoWell can be seen as a learning ecosystem with the same integrated and holistic objectives as a learning ecosystem. Much can be gained by thinking of city and community development in systems terms, so that we open up creative opportunities, connecting up things with system relationships. This is particularly important in addressing biological and planetary dimensions of a sustainable future. So I'm suggesting that the opportunity exists to look at the EcCoWell concept with fresh eyes. I look forward to seeing where this webinar takes us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that fantastic introduction to EcCoWell and really giving us a flavour of how it has evolved over the years. And I suppose it really brings to mind in the present challenges that we have faced over the last year through COVID-19 and the challenges facing cities, how important the focus on working together and collaboration, partnership, the learning neighbourhoods and the EcCoWell approach is actually becoming even more relevant than ever. And we look forward to the future and working together with you and with Pascal. That's a lovely overview and really sets the context for us all this morning in hearing about the practical on-the-ground projects now shortly. Thank you, Peter. And also, I would like to wish, on behalf of myself and Jack, a lovely warm congratulations to you on your investiture earlier this week on Tuesday in Australia. A huge honor, and I hope you enjoyed it and your family enjoyed it as well, Peter. Very well deserved. I suppose now we are actually going to go on to meet 4 amazing projects, and we're going to look at them in order of a grassroots model of a transformative approach of a partnership that uses empathy or looks at the project through the empathy lens, then regional, national, and international. So you see the projects mentioned on screen. I'll be speaking in a moment to Sergio about educational peace building in Medellin and Acapulco. We'll hear from Eugenia, a long-term partner that Peter referred to in his EcCoWell introduction, on the Taipei and Datong learning region ecosystems. My own colleague here in Ireland, Dennis Barish, is going to take us through the Irish network of learning cities. And finally, our firm friend and colleague, now at this stage, Diane from the Global Learning Festival, that indeed Limerick and the Irish Network of Learning Cities has participated in, is going to close our 4 examples of the Global Learning Festival. So I'd like to now invite Sergio to speak with me, I suppose, on a number of questions. We can just add the...
That should be spotlight now, Yvonne.
Perfect, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Helen. So, Sergio, the educational peace building in Medellin, Colombia, and Acapulco, Mexico. Sergio, I believe you're from Mexico yourself, and we enjoyed many meetings and email preparations for the webinar today. But I suppose by way of introduction, you're presently based in the University of Glasgow, and you can tell us more about that in a moment. But having been home to Mexico for quite a while due to COVID-19, and you're connected with the Pascal Learning Cities Networks program, of course, in the University of Glasgow also. But you're very welcome today. And I suppose, would you just like to give us an introduction, firstly, Sergio, to yourself and to the project, to tell us a little bit about your project today and the partners involved in the project.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. This is a fantastic job, a fantastic intervention. Yeah, I'm Sergio Hernandez. I'm from Mexico City. I've been doing a PhD, 3rd year in education policy at the University of Glasgow. Our project is called Educational Peace Building Model, Understanding the Role of Education, Culture, and Learning in Responding to Crisis. We specifically look at the role of non-formal education and culture in responding to urban violence in the very iconic cities of Medellin in Colombia and Acapulco in Mexico. We aim at exploring if the provision of non-formal education and culture has a positive impact on peace building in these cities that have been heavily affected by urban violence in recent years. Our partnership is multi-layered. The city authorities in both cities, Medellin and Acapulco, are supporting our research project and are facilitating access to information, which is very helpful for us. At the same time, we have cooperations with 2 research institutions in both cities, the Foundation Ideas for Peace in Colombia and the Colegio de Sonora in Mexico are our partners in the field. But we also have cooperation and collaboration with different stakeholders in both cities. So it's been a really interesting research project.
That is absolutely amazing, and I suppose it's lovely to hear about the cities of Medellin and Acapulco. And I suppose I'm just interested to hear, what are the elements that you think make the partnership transformational, and in what way was empathy a driver in the partnership, Sergio?
Oh, it's a very good question. Thank you. Yeah, actually, empathy is a very big element in a research project. We are a very international team of researchers. The University of Glasgow has established collaboration with research centers working on peace building projects in both countries. As I mentioned, the Foundation Ideas for Peace in Colombia and the Colegio de Sonora in Mexico are our partners in the field. Both institutions have vast experience researching the different factors that contribute to building peace in Latin America. They share our vision that non-formal education and culture are important elements that allow for the development of more cohesive and peaceful societies. The partnership between research centers was developed basically on the grounds of this common understanding that education and culture play a role in shaping better societies. As mentioned before, the partnership with them has been very productive in many regards. Since they have been researching on the topics in past years, they understand our academic goals, but most importantly, they understand our passion for building peace in our region, Latin America, which is sadly one of the most violent regions in the world.
That's absolutely amazing. And I suppose it's lovely to think of empathy and having empathy with the communities and having suffered violence. I mean, it's lovely to think of that you learned from Medellin, Colombia, because I know that it originated from the 2017 UNESCO conference that was held in Medellin, your collaboration and the partnership. And I would have seen myself there, I suppose, the history of violence that community had and how and we were brought on tours, as you know yourself, Sergio, and how the communities worked together to overcome that and to put things in place for the communities for peace building and to remove violence, drug violence, etc. It's absolutely truly wonderful to use empathy for communities and to bring it to Acapulco and working with the agencies and the research institutions that you describe. I suppose just in relation to empathy partnerships, we're interested today in how do we measure its success, and not that it necessarily has to be quantitatively measured or formally, etc., but how do you speak, Sergio, to the partnership success and the model that you described?
Well, I think the partnership has been very successful in many regards, especially we aimed at interviewing people in the field, different community members, different stakeholders. Due to the global pandemic, some of the interviews initially planned to be face-to-face were conducted remotely. Nevertheless, the research teams in both cities have done a fantastic job in reaching out to community members, city leaders, and key stakeholders in the cities that have shared already their experience and their perception on peace building through non-formal education and culture, which is already something that's been really important for us. The partnership between the research centers and the University of Glasgow has been really successful. We have managed to interview so far more than 100 persons in both cities, ranging from politicians, peace builders, artists, community leaders, teachers, and so many others. Particularly, our partners in Medellin have already developed a map of community stakeholders that have been very active in peace building projects, especially in difficult neighborhoods with high crime and homicide rates. It's been fascinating to learn that the work conducted by this community member has a positive impact on peace building. We are still in the intermediate stage of the project. We are analyzing and codifying the interviews, and we have some preliminary results very soon that we'd like to share with you.
Oh, that would be amazing, Sergio. Thank you. And I think a link on your project has been shared in the chat already. But as you have more information, we can share it with, indeed, and link to your own website and web links to share those outcomes and your interviews with all of those participants and the successful outcomes of the initiative. I suppose just to kind of wrap up and to reflect on Medellin and Acapulco and the success that you have achieved, how would you say that imagination has been used to create and drive this partnership approach?
Yeah, as you were saying, Yvonne, the project came up during the 4th conference on learning cities in Medellin in 2019. So many mayors from Mexico and other countries attended the conference, especially the authorities of the city of Acapulco. They were also interested in learning more about learning cities and also embracing this approach to transform the city into a learning city. So on the other hand, the city of Medellin organized tour visits in different neighborhoods in the city. We visited the famous neighborhood called the 13 Comuna, where the community members have transformed the city, this area, into a more peaceful one. And the different phases of Medellin were explained to us during the conference and during the visits. And as many of you know, the city of Medellin was considered the most violent city in the world in the 80s and 90s, especially related to drug cartels. So the authorities of Acapulco found this very interesting because they've also been struggling with the same urban violence. So they wanted to learn more about Medellin and to exchange experiences. So the representatives of Acapulco that attended the conference were fascinated by the projects, and that's when the idea came up. We contacted different researchers in both countries until we came across these institutions I've been mentioning. We presented our research proposal to them, and we started exchanging ideas to integrate the research proposal in a more dynamic way. We integrated the visions of the different research centers, and the partnership has been really interesting and fascinating so far.
Wow, that's absolutely wonderful, Sergio. Yes, indeed. I remember seeing it in Comuna 19 and the cable cars to tackle the issue of people's transport to be able to get into the town or to go to work, to a job, etc. And that they tackled those very innovatively, or escalators right up into the disadvantaged neighborhoods. It was lovely to see what, I suppose, working together, and that's what we do with empathy, that we collaborate. It's such a successful partnership model that you've brought it with research agencies and with the support of the University of Glasgow to Acapulco in Mexico, and congratulations, Sergio.
Thank you very much.
We'll take questions towards the very end of the webinar, if that's okay. And if people don't mind that we don't stop between speakers, we might invite now Eugenia from Taipei in Taiwan to tell us about another partnership initiative.
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you. Hi, Yvonne. Well,
Hello
hi.
there, Eugenia. Nice to see you again. Eugenia, you're going to tell us about, I suppose, the fact that Taipei has been long involved with EcCoWell, as Peter introduced, and I think you're going to tell us a little bit more about that. So can you describe the partners involved and the project that you're going to introduce to us, please?
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, we have been working on the EcCoWell project since 2012. The implementation of the EcCoWell project in Datong can provide the citizens with a deeper understanding lifelong learning in order to get a better understanding of the world around us. And this project inspired by the Peter Kearns in 2012, living and learning in EcCoWell cities. Datong Community College has been promoting lifelong learning within Datong district, a very traditional neighborhood in Taipei, hard and deep. And at the same time, starting from the declaration of Taipei as a learning city, Datong Community College works as a hub to integrate the resource from the public sector and also the local civic organizations and the passionate citizens volunteers. And this project is called the Happy Fun Eco City. This is an involving project and aims to build a Taipei a healthier and a happy city with sustainable and eco-friendly living environment for citizens now and in the future. Overall, working on the EcCoWell project, it can enhance the citizens' life quality and global partnership for the sustainable development. And at the same time, let the citizens understand and learn the importance of the environmental protection and eco-city through this project. Inspire the citizens to think globally and act locally in order to respond to the global issues such as climate change and achieve the feature of the environmental and the economic innovation in Taipei. And as we know, during the pandemic, people feel isolated and lonely. By creating a 3D imitation video this year, we can try to find new ways to make the learning fun and look forward to it under the uncertainty and achieve the purpose of the promoting the EcCoWell 3 project and also the digital learning. By doing so, we believe that making the learning fun can let the citizens learn healthy ways to manage and cope with the stress and anxiety in order to support one another through this challenging time. And hopefully it will make people and the community become more resilient. Now I'm going to present this video to you all, and I hope you all like it. Okay?
Okay,
Right.
I will just do a bit of technical moving around here, and I'll hopefully play this fine.
很多人主张台北市要国际化，但是所有国际化的城市都在追求健康。我认为打造一个绿色健康的台北是我的使命，我要将台北打造成一个田园城市。真这个动机就是要改变这个生态的环境。
Now, I hope that played okay.
That was
I hope
perfect.
you all like it.
Eugenia, that was lovely, and thank you. And I see questions from Derry about us sharing, Jack and I sharing post webinar, and we will indeed be sharing a link to Eugenia's video, that beautiful video there, and also the presentation from this morning and other resources and links to the for Keynote, the partners' innovative projects after the webinar to all attendees.
Thank you.
But Taipei truly is an eco city, a happy farm, and we can see there joy that it has brought to both young and old, and the appreciation of ecology, community, and for each other and lifelong learning. But I suppose we'd like to tie in with empathy, and in what way was empathy a driver in this partnership, Eugenia?
Okay, in answering this question, helping its citizens to pursue the lifelong learning, and though a sustainable development of the Taipei city to be assured has long been recognized since the declaration of the Taipei as a learning city was signed. And Datong Community College is designed to help the citizens in Datong district realize the meaning and the importance of the lifelong learning. Our project starts from very, very basic idea, green our own surroundings and revitalizing our own neighborhood. So citizens are more than happy to get involved and eager to help. And the partnership in our project has 3 elements to make it transformational. One is through the support from the public sectors, which is Taipei City government. The second is enthusiasm and passion from the local citizens. And the third is a coordination efforts from my school. And Datong Community College stand by the local and exert the social cohesion of locals. And at the same time, the resource from the public sectors are drawn out through the Datong Community College. And the mutual understanding and community consensus are building up step by step. Empathy underlies the cooperations from these three partners and empathy unit. Yes.
That truly is empathy in action, and we can see that and in your lovely video as well, Eugenia. Thank you. I suppose conscious we have to hear from two more lovely projects shortly, so I might just pose the last couple of questions to you, kind of merged together, and you can tell us about both of them. The second, that idea of measuring, and I saw a lot of figures up of achievements in the last slide there in your video, but how do you measure this wonderful partnership model's success is one thing. And the other is this idea of imagination, and how was imagination also used to drive it? So if you could maybe tell us about both of those, please, to close, Eugenia.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think the Datong district is a traditional community in Taipei. The development and the modernization of this district have a certain limitation for the preservation of historical buildings. But the greening project of the idle space and the rooftops makes the whole community lively and memorable. This old community start to attract the young people to move in again, and working with the local rice festival organized in the Guoshen neighborhood. We have encouraged seniors in the neighborhood to teach young people how to make the Taiwanese traditional rice cakes and pass on the traditional food information to the youth. This successfully connects different generations. And most important part is to give the seniors a sense of achievement, and they are willing to work out and attend the community activities, which is aimed at active aging. And the most important is they feel they are valued by the people. After the farming campus idea is introduced, the awareness of the food safety and the consciousness of the healthy diet are infused into the younger generation. And at the same time, the parents and the grandparents can be influenced by their own children. Now we already have a farming campus from elementary schools to senior high schools, which enhance the awareness of the food education and ecology. Furtherly, the idea is promoted to the whole city. Neighborhood farming gatherings and the growing vegetable horticulture therapy are promoted, and edible landscapes are spreading in the whole city. A healthier and a happier eco-city is gradually forming. And in my view, I think that citizens have an expectation for their future life, happier, healthier, greener, and more eco-friendly, or no harm upon ecosystems. And then they are more eager to change their surroundings and more willing to invite others to work together. Then a real and lasting shift towards the shared objective for an eco-Taiwan is possibly formed.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Eugenia. That is
you.
Lovely introduction to that wonderful initiative today. Thank you, Eugenia.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Yes, and we can put questions into the chat, and if we've time at close, or the speakers can also hopefully respond to the questions if attendees place them in the chat today. I suppose I'd now like to invite the third innovative partnership model, and it is Dennis Barish from Cork Learning City, but today he's going to be telling us about the Irish Network of Learning Cities.
Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, everybody. It's great to see so many familiar faces and some new faces, and wonderful to see the examples already from Sergio and Eugenia, and a big hello to everyone in Datong, our friends there. We've shared a number of exchanges down through the years, and there's all sorts of possibilities for the future also. And again, just to acknowledge Peter here. Peter visited Cork in 2012 and Limerick, and being part of that EcCoWell story was a key piece of our own understanding as a learning city. So just delighted to be here with you, Yvonne.
We're delighted to have you, Dennis. And I suppose I'd like to invite you to tell us all more about the Irish Network of Learning Cities, the partners involved, and how it came to be, and I suppose, indeed, the history of the Irish Network.
Thanks, Yvonne. And again, just to say, I'm here representing the network today, the Irish Network of Learning Cities. Any one of us could do this role, Yvonne, or Dolores, or Danny, or Denise, or Emer, or Siobhan, or up in Derry, Michelle, or Padraig. We work very much as a flat structure of equal partners. So we are across 5 cities. Cork, Limerick were the early adopters of the learning city ideas, followed by Belfast, who have a fantastic model in the context there, and more recently Dublin and Derry. So as those of you who know your history and your geography, we stretch across the whole island of Ireland, and our island remains divided. There are 2 jurisdictions. In the north, it's under the United Kingdom, and we have the Republic of Ireland in the south. So our network really is really stretching across any divides that are there between cities and between parts of our island, and just to connect, to support each other, to share examples of good practice, and to motivate each other so that all our cities can continue to grow and develop. We started ourselves. It was our own initiative. It grew from a ground up proposal in 2018, after we had a seminar in Cork City on the topic of learning city conversations. And during that event, we featured examples of festivals from all around the world. And Diane submitted a video back then from Wyndham, which was lovely. But after the meeting, we decided we would go out down this road, form a network, and see how we could take it from there. We all want to see each other succeed. It's very much going back to the UN Sustainable Development Goals idea of leave no one behind. And in Ireland, we have a phrase which is in the Irish language, it is Erska Akela Varan Nadina. And that translates to people live in each other's shadows. So as cities in Ireland, we live in each other's shadows, but right around the world, people live in each other's shadows. So that idea of think globally, act locally, and apply that in our own island, that's really where the initiative came from.
I was on mute there for a second. That's a lovely description, and it's nice for me even to remember how Limerick became involved in the network as well, and how it all started out, and how it now happily has 5 cities very actively involved. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Dennis, on what do you think are the elements that make the partnership transformational, and how is empathy an important driver of the partnership?
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. It was really good to reflect on these questions. We have, as I've said, grown the network organically. We are committed to the idea of working across networks, and we have worked across a European and North American regional network under the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities. And then more recently in UNESCO also the concept of a cluster where we can learn from each other across the world on the topic of health and well-being. So we are very committed to working in that way. And it's just lovely to see today from North America, which isn't still part of the UNESCO family for now, and we would like that to evolve. Margaret Shanahan, Peggy, as we know her from Lowell in the United States, and we have worked as a network across the Atlantic also in this way, and across Europe. But back to transformation and empathy, one of the foundational elements which we've discussed is that in all of our efforts, we are dedicated to reaching all our citizens and really putting the learner at the center of everything we do. And all of us in our efforts also in our own context in Ireland, we all have different challenges. We work in different city contexts, but we all share the same broad vision. So in terms of understanding each other's efforts and supporting each other through those efforts, empathy is really at the core. There's lots of examples of how that has helped us over the years. All 5 cities are now members of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities, and in being an open source approach, we've all shared with each other how we do things. Innovative examples in Limerick, for example, the learning ambassadors. More recently in Belfast, there was an award scheme which we have adapted for Cork. So we have used our own commitments in our own cities, shared them with each other, and really, I suppose everyone's success reflects on everybody else.
That's a lovely thought, Dennis, to end that answer with, that everybody's success is all our success, so that one of the 5 cities having success in an empathy partnership, such as the Learning Endeavour Awards in Belfast or the Learning Ambassadors in Limerick, or that we all share in that and have empathy for each other. I think it was lovely to reflect on the importance of empathy for all our partnerships today, and sometimes we don't maybe value it and reflect on it sufficiently. And I think this is what this whole webinar session is about today. Now, not to have it kind of very research or papers or quantitative, etc., but I'm interested in kind of the success and monitoring the success of the partnership structure, and how do you feel and know that it is successful and making gains and valuable and of value to you in Cork Learning City being involved, etc., and for the other members.
Thanks, Yvonne. I suppose we try to keep it very real is one observation I would make at this point. But in terms of what can we look at that has happened because of this, we use the concept of a memorandum of understanding. We've used it in our own city as a way for our partners in Cork to bind themselves together and commit to the development of the city as a learning city. And in 2019, that idea was also proposed across the 5 cities on the island of Ireland in the Irish network. And as a result of that, all 5 cities' mayors or Lord Mayors signed a memorandum of understanding, committing their cities, our cities, to work together as a shared approach to develop our island as a learning island, but also within each of our cities. So that's one observation I would make. The second one, I would like to call on a colleague within the Irish network from the city of Belfast, and again, working in a very different context. And those of you who are familiar with the history know the peace process, and wonderful to hear Sergio's exploration of peace building. The peace process has been a fundamental part of the gradual move from the dark days in the north of Ireland. And I'd like to just ask Dolores to come in at this point and reflect on some of how our network has assisted each other, again, looking at empathy with each other's challenges over the last few years.
Thank you, Dennis. Apologies, can't get my camera on at the minute. I'll work on that. Yes, it's been inspirational this morning. One of the important things for me has been the focus on empathy as a key element in partnerships, because this is unique, really, having the focus on that. It's undervalued, it's underrated, it's often not measured, but it is so important. And I think we would be lost without it. For example, in the network, I feel it's successful, the Irish Network of Learning Cities, because we draw on shared values of wanting inclusive, healthy, socially just, and as you referred to there now, Dennis, peaceful. We want peaceful societies and communities, and never has that been more relevant in the North, I think, than in recent times. And I do think in general that people in our network, and indeed anybody here this morning, if you're drawn to this area of work, which is about fundamentally wanting change for people, if you want to improve quality of life of people, I think you draw on your own experiences of the barriers that you've faced in your own life, or you've seen the communities that you've lived in face. And I think all of us believe that learning can be used to transform lives whenever it's used well and offered at the right time. So I think for us, empathy is so key. We use our own experiences in our work and our approaches to supporting each other. So very practically, what does that mean for us? I think we all had a role in supporting each other to get going, get started. In those very early days, we relied on what was happening in other cities. And then in turn, we introduced the concept, and we introduced the value of a learning city to other cities and other interested groups near us. And then practically, we've supported each other by attending events in each city and participating in events and sharing and learning from each other. And this has been particularly important at times of challenge. I think building a learning city, we all face challenges at times, and sometimes the odd crisis thrown in just to really keep us on our toes and test our resilience. And having another city come in to give an objective perspective and perhaps talk about their own challenges has been incredibly helpful for us in Belfast. And just finally, you referred, Yvonne, there to our recent Learn Well, Live Well report. And we were very lucky in the network because we built up the relationships to have access to all the expertise and the insights, particularly from Cork and Limerick, who contributed to our report. So in short, our network is based on relationships. It's about people getting to know each other. I feel we're among friends, and you can ask for something. This is a really, really big benefit. You can ask for something at very short notice, and no one says, I don't work that way. We get over ourselves and we say, here you are. So for me and for Belfast, it has been a pleasure and a really key element for us in developing as a learning city. Back to yourselves.
Thanks, Dolores. Back over to you, Yvonne.
That's lovely, and thank you for bringing in Dolores and that lovely perspective from Belfast Learning City as well. Really nice to reflect on that and I suppose the help and support, and it's, you know, even at short notice, and you'll never be told, no, we don't work like that. I like that, Dolores, very much. That's a nice way to have your friends and colleagues work and support each other. Dennis, how was imagination used or a part of this innovative partnership approach from the 5 learning cities working together?
I think, Yvonne, imagination is at the heart of the whole enterprise. We dreamed this up together as a group. It wasn't a national policy. In the Irish context, we work as in different contexts in our cities, and we need to invent our learning city. There isn't a national policy to support us. There aren't funding streams dedicated to it. So we really need to create it as we go. And that has meant we've had to be quite innovative and entrepreneurial in different ways. I suppose in 2020, when we were faced with the challenge to all our citizens in terms of the health of our populations and our sustainable futures, it caused us all to need to think differently. And in different ways across all our cities, we communicated during the year and supported each other to respond to the needs within our cities. And then in terms of our learning city activities, we've all had to adapt, to innovate and to support each other. So one of the big wins of the year, and we're reflecting on it this morning, is we've all contributed to online events and presented at each other's events, appeared on screen at each other's events, and have really created a new sense of community right across the world. We continue to innovate. We're based very firmly on the UNESCO various learning city policies, and in particular, because it's the closest one to the Sustainable Development Goals, our own Cork call to action on learning cities, which Peter mentioned earlier, and that challenges us to live up to becoming a green and healthy learning city, to becoming a more equitable and inclusive learning city, and to supporting the provision of decent work and entrepreneurship in all our learning cities. And that challenge won't go away. We have, within the SDG framework, we have less than 10 years to really make gains in that. We've had to really think differently across all our cities with partners in the health services, in the Cork Chamber would be one of the ones we've linked with the Chamber to bring in the world of business, within the world of culture, and all partners from local government through policing, through community level partners to really deliver on those. So imagination really is at the heart of it. We have kept it very nimble, and just a simple practical challenge to leave you with is it works for us. We kept it simple. It isn't very costly. Even when we were not appearing on screens, we always kept it very sustainable. So we would travel to each other's cities at our own cost, and the host city then would take it in turns to host a meeting and to bring all the visitors around to see practical examples. So it can be done anywhere we feel, in Australia, in Taipei, and Taiwan, across any region can take on a similar approach, either at national level or sub-national level. But by working together, by committing to continue to support each other, it has sustained us all over the last number of years, and I think it has created a really good platform for the whole island of Ireland to deal with Brexit, to deal with the United Kingdom leaving the EU, to deal with the challenge of the pandemic, and to really go forward together, bearing in mind to leave no one behind and bring everybody with us.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And to finish on that about leaving nobody behind, which is at the heart of the Learning City concept, and lovely imagination used there to grapple with the tremendous challenges that we've all been faced with over the last year, not just COVID-19, yes, indeed, and bringing in the other partners and linking with the SDGs and that. Thank you very much about the Irish Network. We might now, without further ado, you can place questions in the chat for Dennis, and he might kindly respond to them, or one of the colleagues from the other members of the Irish Network of Learning Cities indeed could even reply, or we might have time later. But I'd like now to invite Diane, our friend from Wyndham Learning City and Wyndham City Council, who is the coordinator of the Global Learning Festival. You're very welcome, Diane. And thank Diane from the Irish Network that we've just heard about from Dennis very well, because the Irish Network of Learning Cities has been very proud to participate in the Global Learning Festival last September, and will do so again this coming November. So I'm really looking forward to your reflections today on the partnership model that is the Global Learning Festival. So I suppose I'd like to hand over to you, Diane, to say hello to us all from the co-hosting city of Wyndham today with yourself and Jack, and it's lovely to be working with you both in hosting our webinar today. And Jack and yourself are close colleagues working on the Learning City initiative, and I'd like to invite you to tell us about the Global Learning Festival and the partners involved.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And before I start, a big thanks to you and Jack for arranging this webinar. You've done a fantastic job, and I've really enjoyed the speakers this evening. So let me tell you a little bit about the Global Learning Festival. So on behalf of the City of Wyndham and the City of Melton, our neighbour, we co-led and designed, implemented and evaluated the Global Learning Festival last year. So the aim of, just very briefly about the project itself, the aim was to provide unity and connection to communities all over the world during what was a challenging and difficult year for learning communities, and to give learners a first-hand experience of the benefits that lifelong learning can bring during those uncertain times. So we put the word out, and we basically got around 20 key partners from learning communities across the globe, and we worked together to deliver the festival and to capture the impact of our partnerships. And I think the Global Learning Festival really highlighted, and it relied upon, the successful collaborations and partnerships. Otherwise, it just wouldn't have happened. So when I'm talking about partnerships in this context, I'm talking about two separate but intertwined partnerships. That key one between the co-leads, so between Wyndham and Melton, where neighbours, our communities were experiencing similar challenges at similar times in 2020, and that broader partnership between that larger global group of 20. And whilst we were spread across the globe, our communities were sharing pretty common experiences and challenges due to COVID-19, sometimes at different times, but certainly, across the year.
it's lovely to hear about how you came together with Melton, your co-hosting city for the Global Learning Festival, and how you brought the initial 20 partners together, and I suppose how you really just hit a fantastic, innovative idea. And I think I was at a webinar where you put out in the chat, you know, might anybody be interested in participating in the Global Learning Festival? And we said, yes, indeed. Absolutely amazing. But the whole theme today for the webinar is empathy, and I suppose it's born out of Wyndham, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on how empathy is a key driver and important for the Global Learning Festival, Diane.
Yes, so you know, previous speakers have talked about how their projects have been transformational, and I think that element of the partnership and the empathy brought that transformational nature to our project, in the sense that it was the first time that we'd run it, the first time this sort of thing had been attempted. As you say, we had a very short time span. It was about 6 weeks between the initial sort of meeting and the actual festival itself. And I think transformational in terms of the fact that we couldn't have achieved what we achieved without that bigger partnership, and really you know, having the co-lead partnership as well. And I think you know, that you know, given time to reflect, we can really think about how empathy underpinned that approach that we took to the project. So we consciously checked in with partners in an ongoing way, using that empathy lens. So needing to check in on what's going on for our partners at different times. Where is support needed? When did we need support? What was empowering for our partners? You know, what can we do to support them? What support did we need? Checking in with our co-leads and sharing our experiences. You know, it's an understatement to say that 2020 was challenging, but I think sharing the idea of those challenges and hearing that other people were similarly challenged, I think gives us all a sense that we were in this together, but that we were working towards a common goal. And it certainly brought a lot of energy, having this shared project and knowing that other people were suffering, but that we were bringing some really positive change to our common communities.
Great, Diane. I mean, empathy and transformation is really, you know, clearly evident there. And I suppose the co-leading with Wyndham and Melton, even from a purely practical perspective, with a tremendous involved in organising a global learning festival, it really makes sense. But it's amazing that the partnership worked so well and effectively, and you shared that and had empathy both for each other, but all of the other wider partners that you brought in to work with and collaborate on the project as well. It's wonderful. Reflecting on last year's and this year's upcoming one, how do you measure if the project is successful, or how can you point towards the partnership model's success?
Yes, and I think it's always interesting, you know, for the first time you run something, I guess this year we'll have something to compare to, but that first year, the fact that it just happened was a measure of success in itself. And, you know, that initial thought was, look, if we all just contribute one event, we'll have 20, it'll be fantastic. It'll be something for all our communities to get involved with. In the end, we had over 110 events over the 4 days, and we had events from over 15 countries. So we were truly global. You know, we had events from Israel, Ireland, Qatar, United Kingdom, Mexico, Australia, Turkey, US, Kenya, Hungary, Taiwan, and Colombia. So, you know, just the sheer breadth of the countries involved. Registrations came from various sectors, you know, universities, youth, disability, community development, local government, education, state government, and libraries. We estimated over 8,500 people logged in and attended different events. They're continuing to attend by viewing recordings that we've got up on the website. We had over 250 presenters sharing the floor. So yeah, I guess the sheer numbers was an element of success that we could measure. But of course, we had some qualitative evaluation. So we were lucky to have one of our universities here, RMIT, run a comprehensive partner evaluation and impact session after the festival. So that was measuring the impact of the partnership on the partners, looking at what changed, what it had meant for the partners, capturing people's thoughts on their involvement in the festival, and if and in what ways the festival had achieved its goals of creating hope and unity for those involved. So we used a thing called the most significant change technique. We also used a tool that Melton has developed several years ago called the Collective Impact and Assessment Tool, or SIAT, and we administered some surveys. So we took the feedback that we gleaned through the evaluation, and we fed that into this year's planning. So we've pushed the festival back to 8th to the 11th of November this year. We have a formal memorandum of understanding, which Dennis was talking about, with our co-lead, as we did last year. And this year we've created a statement of commitment for the broader group of partners to give them some guidance as to what being involved and setting some parameters and expectations. We had our first meeting in April. We had 13 communities attend, and we've had an enthusiastic response from many others regarding their involvement. So certainly if you're here listening today and you would like to be involved, certainly put your name in the chat or send me an email. We'd love to give you more information and invite you along to some of the planning meetings.
Gosh, it truly, there's an awful lot of measures of the success, both quantitative and qualitative there that you speak of, Diane. Amazing that you started out with saying with a short lead in last year, if we got 20 events, that would be great, and we'd do a pilot and have something innovative and have 110 and some enthusiasm from partners, and to re-engage again this year and to grow on your, I suppose, the statements of commitment from the partners becoming involved in that. So it's going from strength to strength indeed, and becoming even more successful in year 2. Diane, how was imagination, I suppose, from both Wyndham and Melton, important and as a driver and working with your partners in this innovative Global Learning Festival?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think having that empathy lens requires some introspection and some imagination. You need to be thinking about particularly our co-lead partners. It was quite a lot of intense work for both our teams. We both have very small teams. So trying to look at, what is their capacity, what is our capacity, what was going on for them, what resources could they call on, what could we call on, and the global pandemic had similar but different effects and challenges, and then that it seems obvious to state that, but across the world people had different strengths and gaps and needs at different times, and I mean, even now, the nature of the pandemic is changing and its impacts are changing. So needing to, I guess, continually think about, and if perhaps people couldn't make meetings, or they, you didn't return emails or couldn't follow through on something that they were supposed to do, I guess, using that empathy lens and our imagination of what could be going on for them. And I think trying to have some contingencies, trying to encourage those that were running events to have contingency to try to imagine, well, what could we do differently, or what things might need to be put in place. It was all very challenging because it was new, but that, combining of resources and each sort of bringing what they could to the partnership, certainly, we got a greater outcome than if we had, tried this with a smaller group. And again, I repeat that if anyone here is interested to hear more or get involved, yeah, please contact us. You don't necessarily have to go to these. So we're meeting monthly at the moment just to talk about some of the collaborations, talk about the partnerships, talk about what it all means, plan out some themes for this year. If you can't make it to those meetings, that's okay. You're still invited to be involved.
Well, thank you so much, Diane, for sharing that with us. And that's truly imagination, I suppose, about sharing people's expertise, resources, and working together, and linking also with having empathy for each other if, what might be going on for them, both in your Wyndham and Melton, the key partners involved and the ones that you work with. And a lovely invitation to all, and the link is in there to become involved. And the Irish Network of Learning Cities is a proud partner and contributor to the Global Learning Festival, and we look forward to participating again in November, Diane. Thank you. I suppose now I'd like to hand you over, following our 4 keynotes and those fantastic partnership and transformational projects that we've heard on, that all have used empathy and reflected on, I suppose, how empathy is important. Jack is going to facilitate now looking at the importance of empathy partnerships, and she's going to tell us a little bit more, something called the Propeller Model today, and reflect and link that very much into what we've heard from the 4 key partnership models today. So Jack, if you'd like to step forward.
Yeah, sure.
Pull up the slide, Helen, also for Jack.
Hopefully everyone can hear me well.
Yeah.
I'm so humbled to follow in the steps of all those speakers and to have the opportunity to synthesize what's been spoken about. I'll speak about the Propeller model shortly, but I just wanted to say that as we've seen in the 4 interviews, working in good partnerships creates greater and more variable opportunities and outcomes. So we know that we can share more resources, ideas, networks. We've seen it work really well across the 4 examples. And what I've really heard tonight or this morning for those on the other side of the world is that good partnerships promote collaboration rather than competition, which is really important in this world where we are often competing for common funding for different projects. And what I really want to share is that the thing that we can't do, we might have an MOU or a partnership agreement or, some sort of formal recognition that we're in a partnership, but with empathy partnerships, we can't predict what our partnerships will look like. So we need to be very open-minded and very open-hearted that, we're there to empower people rather than hinder people through a deeper sense of human connection. And empathy partnerships invite creativity and flexibility to see our projects as creative learning ecosystems. So rather than thinking of them as projects or partnerships, let's think about them as these amazing opportunities to be creative, use our imagination, and to do our work with heart. I think that when I speak to this Propeller model, this is a model that's recently been developed by the RMIT University, and when we share the notes, we'll share a link to some of the early research around this. But the idea of this is that if we wish to incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals in a holistic way, not just tokenistically, for example, if you're working, doing work in a learning city environment, do you then say we are working to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 4 around education for all and learning for all? This tool actually helps us dive much deeper and to understand how we embed all of the Sustainable Development Goals into our work in holistic ways. And empathy partnerships plays a really major role in that. You may not be able to see super clearly the Propeller model, but one of the fins of the Propeller model is around relating. And what we're talking about with empathy partnerships is this idea of relating to each other, giving our work a bit more heart, and rather than putting the project as the first point of our work, we actually put the partnership first, and then it's followed by what we want to do with the project. That is what I believe is going to help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in a shorter time. And as Dennis said, we are working towards 2030, and working together in smart ways is going to help that, and working with heart, understanding where our partners are coming from, whether it's Medellin that had, you know, such a negative opinion about itself because it was so dangerous, and look how that's turned around. And that really, from what Sergi was saying, has really come through by people working together. Eugenia, what you were saying around, you know, these happy farms, I love that. It makes me want to be a part of those projects, and it feels like you're able to really engage people in those community connections and make it so irresistible that people wouldn't be able to not be a part of those projects. It makes people want to get out of their homes and into the community. I really, I'll not try and pronounce what the beautiful Irish that Dennis said, but I love that idea that we want everybody to exceed, and people live in each other's shadows. That idea of empathy is really embedded in that. What are other people coming to the table with? They're not just here and bringing, you know, their knowledge and stuff. How are people getting here? What journey have they been on? If we can consider that, you know, a lot of us have lost loved ones, or, you know, we've been really, really affected by COVID. I know a lot of people around this virtual table have been affected by conflict. We need to really understand where the other's coming from and be okay with whatever they wish to bring to the partnership. And then Diane, my dear colleague, I'm so lucky to work with you. I love that idea that with our Global Learning Festival, it was the basis of everything we were trying to do was around unity and connection. That is empathy in a nutshell. And it's often hard to articulate what we're trying to do here, but I think that you really were able to show that through this, through the Global Learning Festival. And I can't wait for this year, November 8th until the 11th, everybody, if you want to come on board to see empathy in partnerships in action again. So I'm very aware of the time, and I just wanted to say that we'll share the slides, we'll share some more information around this Propeller model. We really encourage people to read about the Sustainable Development Goals and to see how you can really profoundly integrate them into your work. Because if we're not all working towards these global goals, what are we working towards? To create equity and to create a better world for everybody, what are we working towards? So thank you everybody for such rich contributions and signing in. I know there's some people that have come in at crazy morning times and others that are here quite late as well. So I'll just hand over to Yvonne to do a final farewell, but thank you again. It's been such a privilege to be able to bring this together with everybody here, and particularly with Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Jack. Wow, that Propeller model is really awesome, as you say in Australia yourselves. The links to the SDGs, but also it's fascinating to reflect on that it's the partnership first, not necessarily the focus on the end goal or what you want to achieve, and that it might be more work and perhaps take longer, but that it is worth it, and partnerships with empathy are very much worth it, and that I suppose they're hugely rewarding, and how they can be linked with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We will, as Jack said, circulate information both on this approach and the Propeller model and empathy partnerships that Jack has presented very kindly in synthesizing and bringing in some reflections from our 4 keynotes, but also with the presentation from this morning and the links that might have been put in the chat. Eugenia's video, I know, was requested by many people today. I'm watching the questions coming in from the chat, but I suppose people can follow up when they get the context, the contact details and the emails of the keynote speakers today to the attendees when Jack and I email them out, and you can follow up yourselves with the keynote speakers. I would like just to say on behalf of both Learning Limerick and Jack in Wyndham Learning City as the two co-hosts today, a huge thank you to everybody today, and a particular thanks again to the main man that kicked off today, Peter Kearns from Pascal, and thank you again from us for bringing the two cities together and inviting us to co-host the webinar today. And I suppose Peter and then Jack, I'd like you both just to say a fond farewell, and I'm going to hand over to both of you individually, just any reflections on the webinar that you might have or any follow-up for the participants. Peter, do you have any closing thoughts for us, please? I think you're on mute there, Peter.
Sorry, forgot to unmute.
Thanks, Denise.
I'd like firstly to congratulate Yvonne and Jack, their splendid work in putting this together. When I asked them to organise this, I rather wondered what would happen, but I think what has happened has exceeded my expectations. It has been a very, very good experience. I think what you've done is show a range of experiences, which are really a range of perspectives on the subject. And I think they were truly enlightening. Perhaps I can just add that the hard is the differences that must happen. So we developed local and global, both UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is what we need. So we work our way through, we navigate them, and we find the way to bring them together and to progress them. So the hard part, the psychosocial aspects, are things we still need to work on, but I think you've taken us a long way, so thank you very much for what you've done.
And I'll just close by saying, just keep on having heart in your projects. Attend these events, get energized by empathy. It really does help drive good, richer projects that have happier participants, happier partners as well. So just think, apply heart to everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Jack. There was a link just posted just 1 second ago from Helen Fitzgerald, my colleague there, a survey that Jack kindly shared the design in SurveyMonkey. Just if you copy out the link there and take a few minutes after the webinar, it'll only take a few minutes of your time. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today, what you found useful, any follow-up or suggestions for improvement indeed. So without further ado, unless anybody has any burning goodbyes or farewells to say, thank you very much from Wyndham and Limerick and from Pascal EcCoWell.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, thanks.
Good night to Australia.
Good morning. Good
Bye.
evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you
Bye.
to all our speakers.
And good afternoon from Turkey. Thank you.
Hey, Fatima.
Hi, Fatma.